I'm going to share this out and see if we can get a couple people in here. Hello. We're doing the Atheist Bible study today, if you're joining us. How are you doing? I got my new Bible. I'm pretty excited about it. Oh, you can't see because of the green screen. Hi, Lori. How are you? Oh, wow. How was it? We are going to start in Genesis 1 today. If you can, hit those like buttons so that I can maybe get out to the algorithm and get a couple people in here so we can do the Bible study. I'm good. I'm really good. I was live last night with Joyful Apostate, and he did an awesome job. It was really good. We had to restart a few times, but otherwise, it was really good. Hello, Fat Jesus. How are you? If anybody wants to come up and talk with me during the little Bible study, that would be great because I do feel better when I'm talking to somebody like that. So let me know. Hi, Captain. How are you? So we're getting a few people in here. Make sure you grab your Bibles. I will be reading the chapter, though, just so we have it all read for the day. I'm doing good. Doing really good. If you'd like to come up, send me a guest request, and you can come up and sit with me while we do the Bible study. I'd love to have somebody here so I can talk to somebody one-on-one. It always feels easier for me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start reading chapter 1. I am using the NRSV, and that's what I'll be reading from, but I will try to look into any words where we might have some, translation issues or whatever. Hi, Hippie. If anybody wants to come up and join me, just send me a guest request. I'd love to have somebody up here while we're doing this. It would be great. So send me a request if you'd like to come up and talk with me while I do the Bible study. All right, we're going to do chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, 6 days of creation and the Sabbath. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. Let me know if you want to come up and join me, okay? And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit, trees of every kind. Lost my place here. On earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind, bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God said that it was good. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky. Sorry, lost my place again. To give light upon the earth, and it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. Tiny, tiny, rawr. I just saw it. Thank you. Let's see. Where are we now? I said the fourth day, right? And God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish and the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all of the animals of the earth, and over everything creeping, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. So in this Bible study, again, if you want to come up and talk with me while I go through the Bible study, that is great. Just send me a guest request and I'll bring you right up. I want to talk to you guys first about how... Hey, Jason. Oh, you did send a request? Let me look, because I do not see it. I'm just going to invite you. I don't know why it doesn't show it. You guys, thank you for all the likes and the shares and the gifts. I really appreciate it. Hi, Hippie.
How you doing? You all right?
Let me turn up my volume on my phone so I can hear you better. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Testing.
Yeah,
One,
how are
two.
you doing today?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Just come off the back of Laurie's live. So yeah, don't you find it fascinating, the dome nonsense that all the flat earthers with the dome, and then we see exactly where they get it from, innit?
Yes, isn't that funny? And I'm going to tell you, we're going to go over the things that I was taught, when I was a Christian, and then we're going to go over the things we now know. So,
Yeah.
um, by the way, the Christian point of view, most of my research was done from Answers in Genesis. It's an American fundamentalist Christian apologetics parachute organization. It advocates for young earth creationism on the basis of its literal, historical, grammatical interpretation of the book of Genesis and the Bible as a whole. Out of the belief in biblical inerrancy, so they don't believe the Bible has any errors. It rejects the results of scientific investigations that contradict their view of the Genesis creation narrative. Basically, they believe the earth is a very young earth. It's only a few thousand years old. And one of their main guys is Ken Ham. He founded the United States branch. So we're going to be going over some things that Ken Ham teaches and that I believe.
Gotta
I
love it.
believed because I liked Ken Ham, so I was kind of foolish.
Were you younger when you were a Christian then?
I was. Well, kinda. Okay, so I think that might have been one of the when I started learning about Ken Ham and his beliefs,
Yeah.
and then I did my own research about the claims he made. It was starting to have me confused. You know what I'm saying? So it was definitely one of the things that made me start deconstructing.
Yeah, yeah. How long have you been deconstructed now, or keep deconstructing?
About 10 years now.
All right, cool. Yeah, so you're experienced now. That's good.
Yeah, I would say what happened was I kind of did things backwards. Like I literally stopped believing before I started deconstructing everything about it. I just one day just was like, I think this is just all bullshit and I can't believe anymore. And then I started going through realizing all the dumb things that I believed. And then I was like, oh, wow.
Oh, me.
So according to Ken Ham, this is all going to be about the fact that he does each thing in one day. Okay, so we're going to talk about one day. Okay, and according to Ken Ham, the Earth is only a few thousand years old. He believes that the secular world needs the Earth to be billions of years old in order to back evolution and the Big Bang and to deny creation. Evolution could not have occurred in thousands of years. So he knows that. Like that's his words. He's like, you guys, evolution could not have happened in a few thousand years. That's why these scientists want you to believe that. And he says that the Earth is millions of years old. It's billions, but so yeah, that's his firm belief. Thousands of years supposes that creation days are ordinary days. So when people tell you no, Genesis is, he's not talking about ordinary days. Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis believe it's one single day. Thousands of years supposes that creation days are ordinary days. If you take 7 literal days and then you add the genealogy that is in the Bible, you get thousands, not billions of years. There are no gaps in the genealogy in the Old Testament. So with 7 days plus the genealogy, you get about 6,000 years plus the 2,000 years since the Bible was written. They think the world is 8,000 years old. Is that crazy?
And the claim of it being a day is actually backed up by the Hebrew text. There's no other way to translate that day. There's the apologetics that a day to us is 1,000 years to God, but that doesn't tie in with the actual text.
That's right. And the word in Hebrew is yom. It is used 2,301 times in the Old Testament. Every single time we know exactly what it means. There's no, like, you don't go, oh, I wonder what they mean. We know that day can mean like, like an era or something. Like, so if I say back in my day, but that's not what they're talking about, because we see whenever it's with a number, it's the word day with a number is 410 times. Like if you say the third day or the fourth day, it always means an ordinary day. Whenever it says evening or morning in a passage, which is about 38 times, it means an ordinary day. And whenever you say evening morning with a word, like the writer means ordinary day. So night with day also means ordinary day. So every single time it means ordinary day. You know, Yom doesn't mean something else. So in Genesis, we see night, evening, morning, number, first day. So that means an ordinary day. It meets all the criteria. Ken Ham also believes that the reason why we have a 7-day week is because of Genesis. That's what he thinks. That's why we do it. But how scholars point out that we were actually doing a 7-day week because of Babylonians and the decree of King Sargon I of Akkad around 2300 BCE. They used a 7-day week. It was before telescopes. They used 7 for the 7 visible celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets that were visible with the naked eye. So no, Genesis is not the reason why we have a 7-day week. And they like to also point out that we have the calendar we have because of Jesus. Otherwise, but we're not even going to get into that one. That one's completely wrong too.
That's a 1500 CE calendar.
Yep. Many people like to point out that in Peter 2 that says the day is like 1,000 years. What some people forget is that it actually says with the Lord. So when you are with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. Also, the Greek word day can't be used to translate the Hebrew word day as used in Genesis 1. We know that. That doesn't translate straight over. Ken Ham likes to admit that the world is he does not like to admit that the world is millions of years old, but it's actually billions of years old. He keeps saying millions. But he does say, without the foundation of the book of Genesis being true, then the whole rest of the Bible is just bullshit. So he admits that. If Genesis is fallible, inaccurate, a lie, then the whole rest of their religion is a lie. Isn't that amazing?
Can we look at that quickly? When this was meant to have been written by Moses, yeah?
Yeah.
And what year would that have been? That would have been around 2400 BC, something around there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a bit later than that, I think. Yeah, but either way, Genesis was written between 1000 BCE and 500 BCE, and it was being written throughout the whole of that period, which is how it gets to varying creation stories. They're written at different times by different groups. So it's 500 years to write this, but I mean that makes Moses over 1,000 years old when he wrote it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Not going to happen. Yeah. Sorry, Ken.
Well, we're going to look at now the science and basically the science of how what the Bible is purporting cannot be true. So first of all, in Genesis 1, it says that he created the heavens and the earth. I was going to get my Bible. I think it says heavens and the earth at the same time. But we know that the universe is the heavens. So, and the earth were not formed at the same time. So he says it like it was one day, and it couldn't have been, because the universe is older than the earth. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. And the reason we know this, because people like to go, well, you don't know that, you weren't there. The reason we know this is that science made detailed observations of the fluctuations in the cosmic microwave background, and using the information in Einstein's theory of general relativity, they could run the clock backwards. The Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. So the Earth and the universe could not have been created at the same time. Now, some people like to point out that the earth was not covered in water when the earth formed, But to be honest with you, I looked into it and science doesn't really have a consensus. You know what I mean? Some of them think that maybe it was, some of them believe we were just a hot molten ball, So I'm not even gonna really get into whether scientifically we had water all over us or not. The next thing is that he says that he created light, but if the universe was created, there was definitely already light sources. So that doesn't really, yeah, that could be a deep rabbit hole, Dana. Some people like to point out that the light and dark in this verse is from enlightenment. So it doesn't mean, actual physical light and darkness, that it means enlightenment. But that doesn't make sense because why would God need enlightenment? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that makes sense. And it's not the sun, because the sun isn't created until verse 14 in Genesis 1.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so it means like day and night have no meaning in this verse,
Yeah.
It's like somebody didn't understand this, where the light sources came from when they were writing this. So they just wrote a bunch of hogwash, really. Then the Bible talks about the firmament, okay, or the expanse, also called a dome. And it kind of sounds like a ceiling or a roof, I mean, I don't know how you could look at it a different way right there. But so this was written also before the theory of gravity, and so it kind of suggests like things are hung up on it, like, you know what I mean? Doesn't it sound like that when you're reading it? Let me see.
If you imagine having no understanding of anything, standing staring at the sea, and then seeing it come back over the top of you, it's all blue in it and it blends. You can see how they got to the idea that it was just the water that went out and then came back over the top in a dome.
Yeah, that's true. And so they have no idea of anything. So again, it just sounds like somebody describing something that they really don't understand. The next thing it says is God created plants and vegetation. Well, there's no sun yet. And we now understand what photosynthesis is. So no plants can survive without the sun. The first forms of life also were above ground. They weren't plants. Were not above ground. It was in the water. So the first life was not a plant. The ocean contains 50 to 80% of all life on Earth, and life began with a single cell organism, not a complex plant life. Plants are approximately 460 million years old. And next, we're going to talk about the moon. It says the moon is a light source. And I think that's, kind of funny because, again, now what we know that the moon is not a light source.
No, it's straight out of the Flat Earthers Handbook again, though. They believe it glows.
That is so weird. Like, I don't understand how you cannot tell that that's a reflection. What part of your brain doesn't actually see it with its own eyes?
Yeah, I don't think most of the brain works, to be honest.
True. Also the moon and the sun are not the same age. We've gone over that. So the sun is the oldest, the earth is younger than the sun, and the moon is about 500 million years younger than earth. So they are not even the same age, and yet he made them all at the same time. So God also made light and dark in verse 4 and verse 14. It doesn't add up because, the light source is the sun. So that really doesn't add up. And light and darkness are not equal and opposite, because darkness is just an absence of light. And again, that was something they didn't really realize back then. But I think that the next thing that God did was really one of the most miraculous things, and I think that is really underrated in all of Christianity and atheism, is that next God created all all of the stars. Do you know how many stars there are?
Did you want me to answer? 'Cause I like
Yeah,
this.
do you know?
Brilliant.
Yeah, there are 200 billion trillion.
And that's only in what we can see.
And the oldest star is 14 billion years old, and the sun is a star. So all of that just really isn't adding up, you know? But oh my God, 200, could you imagine 200 billion trillion stars in one day?
It's no wonder he had to take the seventh day off.
Yeah, no kidding. I wonder why he didn't take the very next day off instead of waiting a few more days. Then God made living creatures. But we know this isn't true because creatures came before plants, so that story also doesn't line up. So the next verse, God says, "Let us make man in our image." And the word us here is often up for contention. Trinitarians like to use this verse to prove the Trinity. But we know that in Hebrew, personal pronouns must match the noun that they describe as well as match the gender and the number. The same goes for God. So if God was a Trinity, and if we look at Isaiah 45, 5 and 6, let me find it. Isaiah 45, 5 and 6. I haven't read my Bible in so long, I don't remember the order of the books anymore. Used to be pretty good at it. Next page. Okay. I am the Lord, and there is no other beside me. There is no God. I arm you, though you do not know me, so that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is no one besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Okay, so that's Isaiah 45, 5 and 6. Who is talking? I am the Lord, and there is no one else. So it is God talking. The original Hebrew uses the first person pronoun ani, or I am. This grammar refers to the single person. Repeatedly in Genesis 1, God uses singular masculine pronouns, not, he says he, not they. Genesis 1:26 is a popular verse for Trinitarians to try to prove God is a Trinity. Us and we are definitely plural, but it does not imply that God is plural or multiple beings. Let us implies multiple persons, not that God is a multiple. So if I say, hippie, let us go eat, I am talking to more than one person, but I'm not more than one person. I am obviously talking to you, like saying, hippie, let's go eat. So who was God talking to? I checked with Bart Ehrman on this, okay? And Bart Ehrman says that the most convincing argument is angels.
It's the divine council.
They were present at creation according to Job 38, 4 through 7. Who's the divine council?
The divine council is basically Yahweh's siblings, all of the children of Elyon. And it's the divine council was the gathering of gods, but you could also bring humans and prophets into the divine council. It's scattered all the way through Deuteronomy and stuff. There's references to it in several places. As we go through, we'll come across the divine council again. But when we get to Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9, the biblical version that's out and about now is very different to the older text, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it's the bit where Yahweh inherits, in the current Bible version, Yahweh inherits the land of Jacob, Israel, as his own from himself. But we know that's not how inheritance works. So it's always been a head scratcher. But when you go back to the older texts from like, before Jesus, before the rewrites, it's Elyon, the Most High, who often known as Elohim, who was the head of the Canaanite pantheon. Because
Okay.
it all started from a pantheon. He distributes the 70 nations between his 70 children, of which Yahweh was one and inherited the land of Jacob. And that's how Yahweh, he was the son of Elyon, and it was one of 70 children, and they formed the divine council. But they would bring prophets up, and as we go through, you'll find the bits where the prophets speak in the divine council. It's biblical. But yeah, the Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9 bit, we now know it as fact. It's there in the oldest text we've got, but it's difficult to be accepted by the church because it makes it into a pantheon and not a monotheistic religion. So it's causing
Ah.
big issues at the moment. But yeah, it's the divine. Whenever God references us or we, he's talking about the divine council.
And they like to think of it as the Trinity, but it's not
Yeah,
the Trinity.
there's no reference to Jesus. You've got to stretch to get a reference to Jesus out of the Hebrew Bible.
The Trinity was added to the Bible at the first council of, and I don't know if I say this right, Nicaea
I
in
see. Yeah,
325 CE. This was
yeah,
done because Christians were worshiping Jesus, which broke the commandment that thou shalt not have any other gods. So they needed a workaround. So people point to 1 John 5:7 and 8, which is a verse where it talks about they were all in agreement. This verse makes it appear as though there is a Trinity, but that is known as, and again, I'm going to butcher these words, the Johannine comma. This is absent from almost all Greek manuscripts. The earliest reference to the comma appears by the 3rd century. So
yeah.
I don't buy
That.
the Trinity. I buy the council before I buy the Trinity. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and also the reference of "you shall have no other gods before me" is a direct command to the Israelites, and it's not saying there are no other gods. It's saying that you will put no other gods before Yahweh because he had inherited those people. They were his people.
The next thing it talks about in Genesis 1 is ruling over all the animals. We couldn't rule over all the animals because many were here for millions of years before humans. So it wasn't that they were all created and we got to rule over all of them because they were already here. Also, evolution shows us that we did not appear on Earth as fully formed humans. We gradually, evolved. In this verse, it sounds as though male and female were created at the same time. And this is what I did find that weird, even as a Christian. They made it sound like at the same time, man and women. And then the next chapter, we're going to find that he made Adam first and then Eve. But science now suggests that women came first. In 1987, a group of geneticists published a study that found that all humans on Earth can trace their lineage back to the Eve gene, a single female ancestor that scientists called the mitochondrial Eve. She lived about 200,000 years ago. So, if God created, this is the question I have. If God created both male and female in his image, does that make God trans?
Oh, the argument for God being trans is huge. Jesus was trans. He had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all the way through the Bible, the trans thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
100%.
definitely think that there's something for that because the only reason they refer to him so much is for the patriarchy, like if a god you wouldn't think would actually have a gender, they would have to be non-binary, I would think. Next, God told two people to fill the whole earth with offspring. And personally, for me, all I can say is that sucks for Eve. Does lactation prove women evolved first? I don't know. I don't know if that does. That's very interesting, Casey. Then it says, then God gave us every plant to eat, but we can't even eat every plant. due to the poisons and stuff. So we actually only eat 0.1% of plants. There's 344,924 plant types on Earth. Most are, a great deal of them not edible by humans. Much of them are for animals and not us. And then God said it was good, but I think that's completely debatable whether it was good when he was done with all this. What do you think, Hippie? Was
Yeah,
it
well,
good?
I'm wondering who was there to hear him say it. Yeah, because all the people were off busy banging each other and all their children to try and populate the earth. Who reported this?
Yeah, that's true. Who is reporting on all of this?
Yeah.
Did he stop and tell them really quick the whole story right as soon as they were created?
It's a bit of an ego problem. He's going, look what I did. It's good. Yeah.
And when I think how much I believed this story, it's very cringeworthy to me. Like, first of all, I originally believed it all to be true because I was indoctrinated since I was a child. But then when I got older and I heard about evolution and the Big Bang and things like that, I was like, wait, you know what? And then when Ken Ham came out, at first some of his arguments sounded like viable, but I was still having that, problem in my brain where I could not get the two things to connect. And I was like, I don't know if I could believe this. And yeah, did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? Do you think that they had belly buttons?
Um, they have in the oldest paintings, but the oldest paintings are not that old, really. I think not as old as the story, but I struggle with it. I struggle to stay focused on it as a story because it is so far removed from any form of reality that could be.
It
And
really is.
I tend to find a lot of humor in it. That's probably a bit inappropriate at times. Because I've even as a kid, when I was like really in it and my parents were like ramming it down my throat, I could never connect to it. It never made sense. And it was only because like the whole God on, sat as a kid, I was sat going, so God's one male, doesn't seem right. There's something missing. And it's only the last few years that I found out about his wife, Asherah. So, you know,
I know.
yeah,
I never heard about her either until just, the past few years.
yeah,
So I didn't know. And by the way, the Bible that we're going to be going through, we are going to be going through the Apocrypha. So I have that in that Bible as well. There was a lot of things. See, I never read those other books. I never read anything that would have made me doubt Christianity. You're not allowed to.
was it your family that got you it? Was it a family thing, or did you find it
Oh,
later?
yes.
It was
Yeah,
family,
my
yeah.
parents raised me as a Methodist, and I grew up in the church, and they were very involved. My mom was in, the Sarah Circle and the outreach, and my father was one of the deacons, and so yeah, I grew up. And then as I got older, be, because I had abandonment issues, because my mom and dad were actually my aunt and uncle. I was abandoned by my mom. My aunt and uncle took me in. And so I had to be the best Christian ever. So I started going to youth group all the time and teaching Sunday school, and eventually, being like a youth pastor and a Bible study teacher. I had to be the best.
Yeah. No, well, it's hard when your parents are right involved in it. You have to live up to their expectation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I never did. I could never, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter that I was the best Christian ever. I was never going to make them proud. So all of this was all in vain. I was doing this for parents who were never going to be proud and a God that didn't exist. So it really sucks that I wasted, 4 decades doing that.
No, you spent 4 decades learning, and the thing is, like, don't knock it because you came out of it really wise. and you came out of it rather than fighting and just going, no, I'm going to become an angry Christian that shouts at people who are trying to talk sense to me on TikTok. You came out and you were like, no, look, facts, look, reality, and that's so. And I think it's easy because it's very much a Christian doctrine to teach us to put ourselves down and
Oh,
to
it does.
our benefits. And like I always try to point out to people, especially ex-Christians, because that toxic training runs so deep. I try and always stop that when I hear it and just go, no, actually, you're doing really well, and help
Well,
people
thank
to
you.
learn over that. I think it's quite important to do that for people, to encourage each other and to break that negative pattern.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it because it is. You are taught that you are not good. There's nothing in you that's good. Only God is good, and only God in you is good. Anything else about you is bad.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
that's really hard, when you're a person who already has issues with abandonment to just hear even God thinks you're not good.
yeah. And especially when you're getting it from childhood, from your primary caregivers, the ones that are meant to nurture you, protect you, guide you, and they're telling you you're shit.
Yep.
It's horrific. It's so damaging. So yeah, and that is voice of experience as well, maybe. But it is. Yeah, I think it's something that we should all encourage each other with, to break out of that and recognise how well we're doing. And you're doing well.
Well,
To sit
thank
here and
you.
do this, having come through it, takes balls. And no,
Well,
big
thank
respect to you
you.
doing it.
Well, I really respect you, Hippie, and I love talking with you on the panels and stuff. You're very knowledgeable and you're just very compassionate. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just some hippie then.
So, was there anything else in the chapter that you like really wanted to go over or anything?
For me or people in the chat. I mean, for me, this.
Either one, people in the chat or Hippie, do you guys have anything that you really wanted to ask a question about, or do you want to come up and ask us a question? Let us know.
Yeah, because this first creation story is known as the Priestley account, and I believe it's the second one, but it got written in front of the next creation account. Because I think they tried to tidy it up because it was so messy with the Adam and Eve
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Yeah, so I believe this is the version that they wrote to try and tidy it up, but somehow they both ended up on the same text because they contradict each other all over the place. When we go through it, like this, the animals, what came first, people or animals? And it's different in both stories. There's loads of little contradictions, but this is the later story that we've just been looking at, I believe.
Oh, I didn't know that. Where can I find the original? Do you know?
The original, I don't think there is an original anymore.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, what do you mean the first creation story?
Yeah, the first creation story.
Oh, that's the next one that we're going to read next with Adam and Eve in it.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah,
Because so far we've had he created man and woman, but
yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean there was just two. This one actually makes more sense because it's man and woman, as in humans. It says
Right,
a description,
right.
so he made many humans. The apologists try and take it as, oh, it's just a different angle on the same story, but the contradictions in the order of who was created, animals or humans first, is a clear sign that it's actually two different stories. But
I
because the
agree.
Adam and Eve story leads into too many questions about incest, and even 3000 is a clear sign that it's actually two different stories. But
I
because the
agree.
Adam and Eve story leads into too many questions about incest, and even 3000, a simpler version, which is this one that we've done now, he made man and woman. It wasn't Adam and Eve. They weren't named. There was no special garden. There was no talking serpents. They simplified it and took the magic out of it to make it more accessible.
When I was growing up, I will say I never was taught that there was a dome or an expanse. Like they just said that that was the sky, and like they never taught me it like what the words actually say. They didn't. They would just kind of, I guess, gloss over that. And I also was always taught that Adam and Eve actually did have incest.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
this
was
is
what
the
I was
concept.
taught. That was the
Yeah,
way they populated the earth, their children. And but that confused me because I wanted to know where the people came from that Cain goes to.
yeah, yeah. No, well,
So it was really confusing to me.
Yeah, well, they tend to, when they start reading the Bible at Genesis 1:1, they read the first two or three famous lines, which, let's face it, should be changed to once upon a time. And
That's true.
then they tend to skip and go into the second creation story, ignoring the first one. We
Yes.
don't, the bit that you've just read with the dome references and everything else, you don't tend to hear that, especially taught in Sunday schools and whatever. They move straight on to, and he created Adam and Eve.
You're right. I don't think that we ever really go over Genesis chapter 1. I
Yeah, no,
think we go
they
over
skip it.
Genesis chapter 2.
Yeah, they do the first line introduction, jump to Genesis 2, Adam and Eve, and then that's the justification for look, it was a man and a woman, so they were clearly hetero, and that's how it should always be. And yeah, there was a talking serpent and a magic tree, and you get right into the more unbelievable nonsense.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of that. That is such a good point. Were you a Christian before hippie?
I was, oh God, it's a long story. I was brought up. My parents found God. My younger brother died when I was really little. They were in a hell of a mess. They found God and they threw themselves into it so far and so hard that within 3, 4 years of getting into it, they'd worked their way through. They started off going to church, worked their way up to they were in church 7 days a week, and we never saw them as kids. And then they formed a cult,
Oh,
which,
wow.
and then they started a cult commune, and there was nothing, but they called it Christian, but it was like so extreme. But they were the leaders of they were the cult leaders, so they
Wow.
had all hallmarks of cult. They were teaching us crap like that. There was going to be books of the Bible written about us. I had prophecies put on me from a really early age that I was going to be the savior of a generation. It was really quite extreme. So yeah, I had the extreme version of it all, but I questioned, but I was terrified because of the brainwashing from, by the time I was like 8, 9 years old, I was scared of going to the toilet because God was watching me, the demons were watching me, they were all waiting for me to do the slightest thing wrong, so that there's loads of spiritual warfare. It was the right extreme. So yeah, so I learned all about it to get out of it.
Oh, I believed in all that spiritual warfare stuff too. I mean, I was a young mom when the whole Left Behind series came out, and oh, I was so into that.
Oh,
And
was that them gnarly books?
yes, they were by Tim LaHaye about the end times.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember hearing about them because they used to give me books to read. They'd read books and they'd get all on their spiritual warfare trip, and then give me. I had piles of books that I was never going to read, like it was a bit, catching dust.
Oh yeah,
But
and
yeah,
then I used to read Frank Peretti too, and Frank Peretti was another, spiritual warfare, but he wrote fiction, and but
yeah,
it would make it seem like, there were demons watching your children in high school, so you should like go pray over the high school, and it was
yeah.
crazy.
Okay, that was fiction. That was my life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you made it through that. How long ago did you get out?
Um, Mentally, like physically, really young. Mentally was it was a journey. It was a real journey because the conditioning was so deep, and I was living like a worldly life, as they would call it. But I was going through mental torment. I was completely convinced, even in my early 20s, I was completely convinced I was gonna. I mean, I'd already decided I was going to go to hell and suffer forever anyway. But and even though I knew it wasn't real, it was like I had. It was yeah. It was a mess in my head for a long, long time. But I had that as a kid. I had that 24 hours a day aggressive preaching and aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
So finding my way out was difficult. It took a long time. And, even now, I do this, I go on the lives and chat about it. But in a way, I'm still, it's still like therapy,
Yeah,
to
I
go
get
through
that.
it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
really get that.
Yeah. And, but also I feel like, I don't know, they say I'm going to save a generation. I want to save a generation of Christians. I want to get them all away from it and help them find a way back to reality so that the world can be a bit nicer and people can be happier. So, I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, you know, I don't I do these lives because I just like hearing the truth too. It reinforces it in me. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, definitely. It's 100%. Because it's when it's conditioned, you have to go over it, and to remind yourself not to go back into that headspace.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so many people out there that believe the fairy tale, and they they look at us like we're the ones crazy for not seeing it. And
And then we
it's
just
very
read the
weird.
first bit of the book, and it's like, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I used to believe in that fairy tale, so part of me really gets where they're coming from, but the other part of me feels like, but don't you get it that it's just like what? Like
Yeah,
it's a talking snake, dude. That doesn't happen. I don't know. It's
yeah.
weird.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, it's given me a real good interest in the way the human mind works. And I've got lots of ideas on how it works. And like I was chatting in one of the lives the other day, and I was saying about how people have this love of stories. It's a passionate love of stories, and it's the suspension of disbelief. And you watch people watch it. I've got a friend who comes around here sometimes, and we've got a telly, and she puts it on, and she watches it, and she's leaning forward, leaning right into it, and she's lost in that world. And you can see there's pleasure in it for her, it just being lost.
Yeah.
And back then they had stories, and people would tell stories, and everyone got involved in the stories. And next time they tell a story, they'd probably embellish a little bit to get more reaction. And this is what we're dealing with: is ancient people telling stories, looking for that reaction. And
Exactly.
people like to believe in magic because it's that something special in it, And then people
Yes,
turned it
they
around
do.
into deconstructing.
And I also realized last night in Joyful's live, we were talking about the slavery issue in the Bible. It dawned on me. Actually, somebody said something in the comments about it, and then it dawned on me. All these people who defend the slavery in the Bible always see themselves as the slave owner.
Always. Yeah.
Always. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, but what if you're the slave? Do you still think it's as fair? Like, what are you talking about? You're talking about beating a human being until an inch of their life, and that's cool with God.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I,
it is because he gives instruction on it. But
yeah,
this is people like right. I don't like saying this, but I read a thing recently about the right people with a right wing inclination. Have it. I'm going to change. People of a right wing inclination tend to like rules and being told what to do, regardless of what the rule is or what the consequence is, and they like to stick to the rules. So when you've got a rule where the God is saying, no, this is fine, they will go to the ends of the earth to defend that rule, because if they have to take that one out, they have to take a whole bunch of others out that they like as well.
yeah. But I've also learned that they all like to pick and choose which rules in the Bible that they have to follow personally.
Yeah, well, they learned that from Paul, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's true. I didn't think about that. But it's just crazy to me because, and it'll be within the same hour of people coming up on a panel where you'll have one person be like, no, you have to follow this rule. This lady last night was saying the reason why it was important to put the rule not to wear mixed fabrics was more important than putting a rule that said don't own other people was because they've done a study, and if you wear mixed fabrics it makes a frequency that basically just kills us. So that's why we walk around with sickness and diseases now and are all depressed, and that was
Right.
more important than don't own other people.
Yeah, because that doesn't get anyone depressed being owned. No one minds.
Right? I looked it up. There was some lady did a study, but I don't really see any real science behind that claim, by the way. So I am not making a claim that mixed fabrics puts out a frequency. I don't think so, but I don't think that's how frequency works. Is that how frequencies work?
Well, frequency is what forms matter in it, but I have no idea. I doubt it. I very much doubt it. Really can't see that being a thing. I
I
think I
thought
do
that
think
was just hilarious. I was like, okay. And again, that's more important than, hey, don't own another
Don't
human
own
being.
people. See,
Got it.
I keep hearing, oh, but God knew that they would own people anyway, so he gave them guidance on how to do it rather than telling them not to because he knew they'd disobey. And it's like, well, isn't that a really weak God?
Yeah, isn't that? And also, he also knew that we would eat shrimp anyway, but he still put that rule in there.
Yeah.
So that whole argument doesn't pan out because he put rules in there of things he knew we would do anyway, like commit adultery, for instance, you know?
And planting two different crops side by side. Hard to avoid.
Yeah, definitely, right? The
Yeah.
Bible calls a bat a bird. I didn't know that. Did you know that one, Hippie?
No, I hadn't picked up on that one.
That's funny. So anyway, that's this week's Bible study. Was there anything else that we miss anything, you guys?
There is a bit from the first line, and I can't remember it, so I'm not going to try and quote it because I might get it wrong. But I will go off and I will try and remember what it is. There's something in the translation. It's something along. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's something in that first line that isn't quite the way that it reads in the Bibles that we have.
Do
And I,
your homework, but I think it's the part where it's like in the beginning, God create or whatever. Like it doesn't actually say it that way.
yeah, it's not that he actually created everything. He started work on the what was already there. It's the way it's written. I believe is that the planet and the waters were already there. He didn't create from nothing because that's the creation ex nihilo for create. Yeah, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
But this is always the later dogma that clouds the actual story. And yeah, I will. I'll go off and I'll read up on it and I'll try and remember what it was exactly. Um, but yeah, he didn't create everything from nothing
Yeah,
originally.
I remembered that when I was doing this Bible study that I saw something about that, but I didn't understand it enough that I didn't want to bring it in. But if you can, that would be great for us to hear next week. I'm going to
Yeah,
be doing this every week on Wednesday morning, same exact time, 11 a.m. Pacific time.
cool.
If you aren't following Hippie Wept, please follow Hippie. He's awesome. Often on other people's lives in Leviticus 11, bats are birds. Okay, I'll check that out, Casey. Thank you. Also, if you want to see great debates tomorrow night, Joyful Apostate will be on at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And thank you for coming up here, Hippie. It makes it easier for me if I have somebody to talk to.
Yeah, that's cool. No worries. If I talk too much, if I come up again, just tell me to shut up.
No, that's okay. I like it. Makes it easier. It feels more comfortable than me just reading everything, you know?
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah.
Well,
No,
thank you again. Hi, Yak. How are you? We're just ending, but join me. Also, I'm gonna post this on my YouTube. I don't have the link up in my bio right now, but I'll put it back up there. But yeah, so if you miss a week and you want to watch it, you can always check it out on YouTube. I'll be posting it later today.
nice.
All right, talk to you guys later. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Love you. Bye.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Now, if I can turn it off.